Picture this. The corridors are silent, but not with peace, only with the kind of stillness that waits for something to break it. Your shoes tap against marble floors as you walk, each step echoing up into the shadows of the vaulted ceiling. The candles lining the passage burn low, their light flickering over the gold-threaded tapestries of battles you did not fight and victories you did not win. They've told you the king is dead. They've also told you very quietly that your work is not finished. At the far end of the corridor, a door stands half open. Beyond it, lamplight spills into the hall in a warm stripe, like the edge of a stage where you are about to perform. Two guards stand on either side, eyes straight ahead, as if refusing to witness what you're about to see. You hesitate in the doorway. She is there, the queen. Her mourning gown pools around her like spilled ink. She doesn't look at you at first, just at the bed. The words she speaks are low, almost breaking apart as they leave her mouth. You must preserve him. There is no need to ask what she means. You've been in this palace long enough to know the hidden orders, the things said behind closed doors that will never be recorded in any chronicle. The room smells of roses and something else sweet and faintly metallic. The curtains have been drawn, shutting out the city. Madrid sleeps beyond these walls, not knowing what lies here. You approach the bed. His face is pale, lips drawn tight in a line that almost looks amused. The man who held Spain in his grip for decades now lies still, yet somehow he keeps a hold on you. Your eyes shift downward. The silk sheets rise in a way that no still body should. You pause, and for a moment you consider turning away. But the Queen's voice cuts through your hesitation. Do what must be done, and tell no one. You pull the sheet back. What greets you is something you've heard whispered about for years, but never seen a thing that defies reason, a thing you would not have believed, if not for the weight of it before you now. You try not to look too long. Your hands, trained for delicate tasks, are suddenly heavy. You remember the murmured stories from the servants, the sudden silences when you entered a room, the foreign physicians brought in through side doors. And you think of the wives, 3 of them, who went into their wedding nights with smiles and came out broken. The Queen is still watching you. Her expression is unreadable, but her knuckles are white where they clutch the folds of her gown. You nod once, more to yourself than to her, and begin the work. The instruments clink softly against the tray. The lamp flame quivers. As you work, you hear footsteps in the corridor, slow, deliberate, pausing outside the door. Then they fade away. The air feels heavier. You glance up at the Queen, but she is looking at the window now, her profile lit by the lamplight, her lips moving silently in what might be prayer or something else entirely. You tell yourself you will finish quickly. You tell yourself you will not think about the life this man lived, the people he touched, the lives he ruined. But you cannot help it. Because the body you are working on is not just a man, it is the story of a kingdom, and you already know that story is one of shame, pain, and things too strange to believe. And somewhere in the palace, you know there are people who would kill to keep you from telling it. Picture the first breath you ever took. The heavy scent of incense in the air, the chill of marble floors, the faces bending over you not with warmth but with expectation. You were born into walls that had stood for centuries, their stones steeped in whispered bargains and forced unions. You never chose your blood. It was chosen for you long before your birth, written in the lines of family trees where the same names repeat like a prayer. Cousin to cousin, uncle to niece, the same faces returning in different portraits. As a child, you learned the weight of the gaze, courtiers watching you not for the smile of a prince, but for signs of the curse they feared might appear. At first, it was only small things, murmurs when you walked past, the occasional stifled laugh. But then came the physicians. They would visit at odd hours, summoned without explanation. The examinations were cold, clinical, always ending with a note scrawled on parchment and a glance exchanged between them. At 13, you heard the first whisper of the word abnormal. At 15, the whispers had turned into careful, deliberate secrecy. You tried to ignore it. You learned to ride, to bow correctly, to speak in the measured tones of the court. But every so often, a servant's eyes would flick down and back up again. You knew they saw. One winter evening, you overheard two grooms in the stables. Never seen anything like it. Careful, you'll lose your tongue. You stepped into the light, and the laughter died. But you had heard enough to know you were being spoken of not as a man, but as something between a curiosity and a danger. Your father was too distant to notice. Your mother sharp, ambitious, saw only a pawn in her games. She kept you close when it suited her, and vanished when the court turned against you. By 17, you were no longer simply a prince with a secret, you were a prince with a reputation. And in a court where reputation could topple kingdoms, yours was becoming dangerous. The foreign envoys heard it too. Letters were exchanged between embassies, sealed with wax but not with silence. Physicians from Rome, Vienna, and Paris arrived ostensibly to study new methods of royal health. You knew they came to study you. The first time one of them made you disrobe, you felt your body tighten in humiliation. His face remained polite, but his eyes betrayed curiosity. He measured, took notes, made a sketch you were not allowed to see. Then he left without speaking to you again. You thought it would end there. It did not. By the time you reached your majority, your future was clear. A marriage would be arranged, and it would be your duty to produce an heir. That duty was the one thing your body might not allow. At night, lying awake in chambers lined with gold, you thought of the whispers, the stares, the notes passed between physicians. You imagined the woman who would be chosen for you unaware, unprepared, stepping into a role that would bind her to your secret for life. And you wondered which would destroy her first, the marriage or you. When the day finally came and you were told of the match, you nodded as though it were expected. You smiled for the court, bowed for the ambassadors, accepted their toasts. But in the quiet, after the feast, you looked into the mirror and told yourself what no one else dared say. The wedding night would not be a joining. It would be an introduction to fear, to shame, and to the first crack in a life that would never truly be hers again. And you would be the one to deliver it. You have rehearsed this night in your mind 100 times, but reality will be nothing like the imagining. The bedchamber is warm from the fire, yet a cold knot coils in your stomach as the doors close behind you. The chambermaids have already arranged everything's silk pillows in strange shapes, bottles of oil lined neatly on a silver tray, and a narrow stool placed near the foot of the bed. They bow and step out quietly, leaving only the sound of the fire crackling and the rustle of fabric as your new wife adjusts her skirts. She does not meet your eyes. The crown on her head may be new, but the weight in her shoulders is centuries old. You watch her fingers tremble as she unpins her hair, each pin clinking against the vanity like a clock marking time. You approach slowly, your mind a tangle of duty and dread. The air is heavy with the scent of roses, and something sharper, the medicinal tang of the oils. You sit beside her on the bed, and she finally looks at you. Her eyes are wide, too bright, her lips pressed into a tight line. There is a moment, a small, fragile moment, when you think she might smile, but then she sees, and the sound she makes is not a scream and not a word. It is the sound of someone stumbling into darkness without a torch. She backs away until her spine meets the wall. "Monster," she whispers, her voice trembling as though the word might summon some worse fate if said too loudly. You do not speak. What would you say? That this is what God has made? That the court knew? That this is the reason for the cushions, the oils, the physicians waiting in the next room? When the door opens again, they enter without looking directly at either of you. The chief physician clears his throat softly and begins to speak not to her, but to you, giving instructions you already know by heart. She stands frozen, her hands gripping the bedpost as if it might anchor her to some safer shore. They show her how the pillows must be arranged, how the oil must be applied. They speak in low tones, the way one might explain a delicate operation. You watch her turn her face away, her eyes fixed on the fire as though she might burn herself there and end this. The first touch is a negotiation between fear and obligation. She bites down on the corner of a silk cushion to keep from crying out. The sound still escapes her, a muffled animal sound that no ceremony or crown could ever disguise. You keep your eyes closed, not out of kindness, but out of necessity. The fire pops, the sheets shift, and somewhere beyond the door you hear the low murmur of guards posted to keep the world away from this moment. When it is over, she curls onto her side, her face toward the wall. You do not reach for her, she does not turn to you. In the weeks that follow, she will take laudanum before these nights. At first in drops, then in spoonfuls, then in quantities that leave her eyes half-lidded and her speech slow. She will learn to move her body without being present in it. You will learn to ignore the way her breath hitches in pain. The court will notice the distance between you, but will say nothing. They will wait for news of an heir, whisper about omens, and glance toward the Queen with the polite pity one gives to the already doomed. And you will begin to understand. The true marriage is not between you and her, it is between your body and the throne, and both will consume her before long. It begins quietly, like rot in the beams of a house, unseen but inevitable. By the second year of marriage, the silences between you and the Queen are filled with the noise of a court that is watching too closely. Every cough, every absence from the banquet table, every change in her figure sparks speculation. The physicians keep their records in locked cabinets, but the servants see more than any archive will ever hold. They see the laudanum bottles hidden behind prayer books. They hear the Queen's muffled sobs through the thick oak doors. You keep the world out of your chambers, but you cannot keep the world from speaking. Outside these walls, Spain is restless. Colonies strain against their chains, taxes rise, soldiers desert. The ministers bring you petitions and warnings, their eyes darting toward the Queen's empty seat at formal dinners. You nod at their words, but hear only the unspoken question beneath them. Will she give you an heir? In private, you summon foreign physicians, men who speak in the clipped tones of Vienna, Rome, Paris. They bring sketches of devices, plans for surgical adjustments, and vials of powders that promise to work what God has denied. Each one assures you of success, and each one leaves without it. You begin to suspect the Queen resists you on purpose. The thought grows like a thorn in your mind. You watch her during Mass, her lips moving in prayer, and wonder if she prays for barrenness. One night, you speak it aloud. You want to deny me an heir. Her hands still on the embroidery in her lap. I want my life. The words land between you like a blade. You do not answer. Later, you will order restraints to be made silk-lined, discreet, stored in the same chest as the other devices. The artisans do not ask questions. They know the price of curiosity. From then on, the bedchamber becomes a stage for procedure rather than intimacy. Pillows are arranged, oils warmed, devices prepared. The Queen swallows laudanum and closes her eyes before you even approach. The physicians keep time, as if the act could be measured into success. But the months pass, and her belly stays flat. Your temper turns outward. Ministers who hesitate are dismissed. Guards are rotated weekly, lest they learn too much. You accuse courtiers of mocking you in coded phrases, exile musicians whose songs carry notes you find suspicious. Meanwhile, the Queen moves through the palace, like a shadow, silent, pale, her hands folded. Servants whisper that she walks the halls at night, praying to saints whose names they cannot hear. Some say she prays for a child, others say she prays for death. You notice the way she flinches when you enter a room, the way her eyes slide past you to the door. You begin to think of her not as your wife, but as a locked door you cannot force open. and the more it resists, the more determined you become to break it. There is another thread weaving through these months. A girl in the kitchens, barely 17, whose laughter you once overheard on a spring morning. She reminds you of a time before all of this, when you were still a prince and the court's whispers had not yet hardened into chains. You pass her in the corridor one evening, and she drops into a clumsy curtsy. You nod without thinking, but the look in her eyes follows you into the night. You do not act on it, not yet, but you hold the thought, a small ember in the cold. The year ends without an heir. The queen falls ill, a fever that keeps her abed for weeks. You sit at her bedside once, watching the damp cloth on her forehead darken with each change. Her eyes open briefly, and she looks at you as though you are a stranger. "You will be free soon," she murmurs, voice thin as parchment. You do not know if she means herself or you. When she recovers, she is not the same. Her hair thins, her hands shake when she lifts a cup, and she no longer attends court at all. The ministers stop asking after her. The gossips move on to other prey. But you do not forget, because you know the eyes of the kingdom are still on you, waiting for proof that you can give it what it demands. And every day that passes without that proof feels like a stone laid on your chest, pressing you closer to the ground. One night, after the court has retired and the corridors are empty, you walk alone to the far end of the palace where the private archives are kept. You unlock a drawer that has not been opened in years. Inside is a stack of letters, some sealed, some torn open long ago. You read them under the lamplight, your eyes tracing the words of foreign physicians, advisors, and allies who once promised solutions. There is no solution. There never was. And yet tomorrow you will rise, put on the crown, and keep the illusion alive. Because the truth is not just your shame, it is the kingdom's, and no one will forgive you for making them see it. You think you have seen every way a woman can disappear while still breathing. You are wrong. The third wife is gone, carried to the grave with the same quiet ceremony the court gives to failures. Her passing leaves the air colder, but the silence that follows is not grief, it is calculation. Ministers speak in low voices, counting months, weighing alliances. The palace corridors smell of polish and dust. Sunlight through tall windows throws pale stripes across the marble floors. It is in one of these stripes that you first see her Maria Cristina of Naples walking toward you, a measured step behind the ambassador who delivers her like a gift. Her veil hides most of her face, but not the swell beneath her gown. You note it immediately, though no one dares speak of it aloud. The council presents her as your bride, chosen for her grace, her youth, her fertile health. You know what they mean. The child she carries will be presented as yours, and the kingdom will accept it because it must. On the wedding day, the chapel smells of lilies and incense. The choir's voices rise toward the vaulted ceiling, each note heavy with the weight of tradition. You hold her hand, feeling how still it is. When you glance at her face, her eyes are not on you, but fixed on the crucifix above the altar. That night, there is no ceremony of pillows, no physicians waiting outside. She retires to her own chamber, and you to yours. The court will not question it, she is carrying the heir, and that is enough. For now. But suspicion is a seed that grows in the dark. You begin to visit her unannounced, first in daylight, then in the hours when the palace sleeps. The first time, she startles at the sight of you in her doorway. "I was sleeping," she says softly. You nod and take a seat beside her bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her breathing. Over the weeks, you notice things. A letter folded into her psalter, the way she turns her body slightly away when you enter, a maid who curtsies too quickly and leaves the room too soon. You order the letters read before they reach her. Most are harmless, greetings from her mother, notes from her sisters. But now and then, there is a phrase that stays with you. "Our little one will know the truth." And you lie awake wondering what truth that might be. The birth comes in a storm. The wind rattles the shutters, rain blurs the lantern light in the courtyard. Servants hurry through the halls with basins of water and clean linens. You wait outside the chamber, pacing, counting each muffled cry. When the midwife appears, her hands are bloodied, but her face is calm. "A girl," she says. You name her without hesitation. The court celebrates, bells ring across the city, but when you hold the child, you search her face for yourself and find nothing certain. From then on, you watch Maria Christina with a sharper eye. You notice when she walks in the garden with certain ladies, when she lingers too long in the chapel, when she avoids your gaze at supper. You add locks to her doors not to keep her in, but to know when she leaves. You have passages built behind the walls, narrow as a coffin's length, from which you can watch unseen. Sometimes you stand there for hours, looking through the small holes drilled into the wood, seeing her brush her hair, read by the window, kneel in prayer. Your guards are rotated daily. The tasters who try your food are kept under watch for half an hour before you eat. More than once, a servant collapses under your stare alone, trembling with the knowledge that a single misstep could end them. The court grows wary. Conversations fall silent when you approach. Courtiers lower their eyes, unsure what words might be twisted into treachery. One night, you find a folded paper under Maria Christina's pillow. It is unsigned, written in a hand you do not recognize. "We are patient. He will not last forever." You burn it in the lamp flame, but the words remain in your mind. She begins to change under your watch. Her laughter vanishes. Her posture stiffens. She eats less, speaks less. Even in public, with the court watching, her eyes seem always to be looking elsewhere, perhaps toward a life beyond these walls, or toward some corner of herself you cannot touch. Your own body betrays you more each year. Pain wakes you in the night. The physicians speak in guarded tones about inflammation, about unnatural strain. You refuse to let them touch you for more than examination. The idea of their pity is unbearable. The kingdom frays at its edges. Reports come from the provinces. Protests, shortages, smuggling. Your ministers urge reforms. You replace them instead. The army is restless. The treasury thins. But the matter that grips you most tightly is still within the palace walls, the heir whose blood may not be your own. When you hold the child, she clutches your finger, tiny and warm. Sometimes you almost believe she could be yours. But at night, lying awake, you remember the timing, the secrecy, the letters. You tell yourself it does not matter. She is the future of the throne, and in the eyes of the kingdom, she is yours. That is enough. It has to be. And yet, you keep the locks, you keep the peepholes, you keep the glass cage intact. The winters feel longer now. The stone of the palace holds the cold even when the fires burn. You rise later, each morning, your joints stiff, your breath shallow. The physicians tell you to rest, to eat more, to think less on matters of strain. You dismiss them all. A king cannot be seen as fading. Maria Christina moves through the palace with a quiet grace that unsettles you. She no longer startles at your sudden entrances, no longer flinches when you stand too close. Instead, she looks at you with a calm that feels like resignation, or worse, pity. The child grows. Her hair curls at the nape. Her eyes are bright. She runs through the gallery laughing, the sound echoing against painted ceilings that have watched centuries of heirs pass. You watch her from the far end of the hall, hands clasped behind your back. When she sees you, she stops, as if unsure whether to approach. You nod, and she comes, small steps slowing the nearer she gets. Sometimes, when you see her with Maria Christina, there is a warmth between them you cannot enter. They share looks, small smiles, touches on the hand, all things that seem to exist in a world beyond your reach. The ministers speak more urgently now. The kingdom is restless, debts mount, alliances falter, but their words wash over you. Your mind is fixed on the few things you can still control: the locks, the watchers, the daily routines of the Queen. At night, the passages are cold under your bare feet as you move to the hidden openings. You watch her read by the lamplight, her lips moving silently. You watch her sleep, her chest rising and falling beneath the covers. You watch until your legs ache from standing. Your health worsens. You feel it in your bones, in the heaviness of your limbs. Some nights, you dream of the wives you buried: the first, turning her face to the wall; the second, waking with screams; the third, silent as frost. They come to you in the dreams without anger, without pity, only with the weight of what they carried. The physicians grow bolder in their warnings. One says softly, "Majesty, there is little time." You send him away. The final illness comes quietly, without drama. A chill you cannot shake, a cough that deepens, a fever that leaves you sweating through the sheets. Maria Cristina visits your bedside each day, her hands cool on your forehead, her voice steady. She does not speak of the past, she does not ask forgiveness. In the still hours before dawn, you wake to find the chamber empty except for a single lamp burning low. The sound of the city beyond the palace walls is faint: a dog barking, the creak of cartwheels. You think of the child, of the throne, of the glass cage you built around them both. You wonder what will happen when you are gone, whether the locks will be removed, whether the passages will be bricked up, whether the court will speak of you in whispers or not at all. When the end comes, it is neither swift nor slow, simply a fading, like a lamp whose oil runs dry. You feel the weight in your chest ease, the sounds of the room grow distant. The last thing you see is not the crown, nor the Queen, nor the child. It is the silk canopy above the bed, shifting slightly in a draught you cannot feel. And then there is nothing. Later, they will close the chamber and let no one enter but the physicians you trusted. They will work in silence, sealing away the one part of you the world was never meant to see. It will be hidden in a place where only a few will ever know, its story carried in whispers through the years. The court will dress in mourning, bells will toll. The streets will fill with those who cheer your passing, those who grieve it, and those who simply come to see the pageantry. Maria Cristina will walk behind your coffin, her face veiled, her hand steady on the child's shoulder. The girl will look around with wide eyes, not fully understanding the weight of the moment. The ministers will speak of legacy, of stability, of the future. They will not speak of the locks, the watchers, the nights in the glass cage. They will not speak of the women who walked into your life with hope and left it in shadow. In time, even your name will be spoken less. The child will grow into her role, the palace will be painted again, the marble floors polished until they reflect the faces of new courtiers. The passages will remain, their peepholes filled with dust. But there will always be someone, a chambermaid, sweeping the unused rooms, a clerk sorting through old letters, who will pause, look at the walls, and remember the stories. And they will know that behind the silks and gold, the throne once held a man whose greatest battles were fought not in war, but in the narrow space between pride and shame.